Part 3, Chapter 19. The weather in New York had turned colder now that fall was in the air. People seemed to walk a little faster. The sky wasn't always as blue as it was just 2 months ago, and the streets were decidedly quieter now that kids were back in school. Terry and her friend Lynn were catching a quick bite while on their lunch break. Both of them worked at the New York Museum of Natural History near Central Park. Terry is an assistant curator at the museum, and Lynn is a resident Egyptologist. Terry Marie Lindstrom is a tall girl. Her father was 6'6" tall, and her mother was 5'11". She was foreordained to reach her current height of 6'3". It was never a problem for Terry, but there seemed to be an unwritten rule among men that a guy would never want to go out with a woman taller than he is. In college, there was this one guy who didn't seem to care one way or the other, and he was the one who clued Terry in a rather humorous way, on this rule of male dating. He told her how every guy knows the old maxim Confucius supposedly said, "Short man who dance with tall woman get busted in face." It made him laugh, and it made Terry's eyes roll. A kind-hearted woman who loves to explore, Terry's fundamental area of exploration is archaeology. She received her master's degree in archaeology from Cornell University, and, along with Lynn, has worked from the ground level up at the museum. She is just now getting to a point where she has paid her dues, and can enjoy things like taking vacations. This newfound latitude also makes it possible to work in various areas of the museum without supervision, since they now trust her enough to know she won't damage any of the priceless artifacts there. Patricia Lynn Marlowe, Terry's best friend since college, is a trained Egyptologist. In 2002, she became an assistant at the same natural history museum where Terry works. Having specialized in entomology early in her working life, she became an assistant to a world-renowned Nobel laureate in the field of ancient Egypt and its dynasties. Many of her pre-existing skills in the use of scientific procedure as it applies to museum preparations transferred to her new post in the anthropology department, where she became acquainted with tool artifacts and gained knowledge of the skeletal anatomy of humans. This had a direct correlation in the field of Egyptology, the field of study where she found her home. Before going to college, she was in the Navy, having served in the War de Jour. Terry and Lynn sat at the tables near the patio of a local bistro talking about some people they knew in college. "Are you kidding? You dated him too?" asked Lynn. "What do you mean, too? You dated him?" "Oh, yeah. I did the old date and dash with him." "Dash? Why did you dash?" "Me? Nuh-uh, honey. You got that backwards. He's the one who dated and dashed." Terry's eyebrows arched. "You're telling me he dashed from you?" "Yep." Then, with a gesture sweeping from her upper body to the lower part, Lynn added, "Can you believe it? Even with this package he ran off?" They both laughed. "He said there was some job calling to him in Alaska and he wanted to go find himself or something lame like that." "Well, just count yourself lucky. I'm not one to kiss and tell. However, when there isn't anything to tell about the kiss, then I'm not really breaking my rule." "No kidding. I never got that far myself. A little lacking, huh?" "Let's just say he lacked in many ways," quipped Terry. Both girls stifled a giggle, immediately placing their hands over their respective mouths, and decided not to pursue this line of conversation that was coming dangerously close to being politically incorrect. "I don't really need to sow my oats nowadays," said Lynn. "I had enough of that before I went to college." "Before? Doesn't that usually happen while you're in college?" "Usually, but the military changes that a little." "Military? How come I never knew you were in the military? Well, I could have told you, but then I'd have to kill you, joked Lynn with a smile. Ooh, now I'm scared. What did you do in there? I was in the Navy and worked on an aircraft carrier. We were stationed for some time off the coast of Egypt, and while there I got turned on to the ancient cultures there. That's why I pursued my line of work. Like a pea in a pod now. The check came, and each calculated her fair share down to the penny. After leaving exactly 15% for a tip, they walked arm in arm down the street toward work. You know, you should come visit me in my department sometime, said Lynn. We are always doing a lot with really interesting artifacts down there, and I'm sure you could get a position in my department. I'll think about it. I'm not exactly enamored with what I'm doing right now, but I think things are about to change. I kind of want to see where things go. Maybe if it doesn't pan out for me in my current department, I'll check out yours. The two friends continued walking and talking their way back to work. Passing by countless tourists, they made their way to the entrance facing Central Park. The facade of this building, made of stone and comprised of curved staircases to the left and right, is quite impressive. The stone staircases frame the sign announcing the American Museum of Natural History and founded 1869. In front, there is a wonderfully decorated fountain surrounded by beautiful flowers and manicured hedges. Walking into the museum was equally as impressive, if not more so. Upon entering, you are immediately greeted by the huge skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus rex, posed as if it was about to sweep down and have you for an afternoon snack. Milling around are various fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, students, and the occasional grandparent resting on the benches located under the chin of the T-Rex, while the rest of their families continue to consume all the museum has to offer. Gently pushing their way through the masses across the marble floors, Terry and Lynn made their way to a door guarded by an electronic security lock. They each learned early on the only way to get through the crowds without being asked a million questions was to hide their ID, which normally hung around the neck. At the door, they waved their museum ID in front of the pad, which caused the lock to click. After an easy swing of the door, Terry and Lynn bid goodbye and proceeded to their respective offices. Terry worked with the senior museum curator. More than she led on to her friend, Terry absolutely loved her work. Being able to handle artifacts literally thousands, if not millions of years old, was a task that quite literally gave her a rush. Knowing each of these items has its own story and working hard to decode exactly what that story is had always been very rewarding to her. Working in the same department with Lynn might be more of that same rush, but she was very content with where she was. Getting to her desk, Terry discovered a note from the senior curator asking her to come by his office for a visit. She made her way to the other end of the floor and walked into the office of her boss. He is generally well known and a doctor, but demands all who work with him simply call him by his first name. Poking her head through his office door, Terry asked, "Neil, you wanted to see me?" "Terry, glad you made it. Come on in." It was funny to her how he knew full well her coming by wasn't optional. It was part of her job to respond to his requests. But still, everyone who worked with him understood Neil was not a micromanager. He appreciated each person. Terry made her way to a chair in front of him and sat. "Terry," he began, "you've been able to complete the analysis of the Babylonian cuneiform tablets on loan to us, right?" "Yes, sir. I CC'd you on the email with the analyses this morning." "Good. You know, I like you. There's a line in that movie about bringing dinosaurs to life again, something about so-and-so being like me. He's a digger. You remind me of myself when I was your age. You're a digger. You dig for the facts, and you don't need to have people hold your hands while you do it." Neil reached over to some rather old and faded papers he had on his desk and continued. Here are some old inventories for items in the basement. The cataloging is really out of date, definitely not in our new computerized inventory management system. What I'd like for you to do is to undertake a rather large project for the museum. Go through all the items in the museum archives and catalog all the ones in the sub-basement. Terry began contemplating the task at hand. She was already beginning to look forward to the job, but Neil's next statement sealed the deal. This is basically going to be your own personal archaeological dig. There are items dating all the way back to the opening of the museum. In fact, the only record we have of those artifacts are these papers, as well as some other books already down there. So, do you think you'd like to take on this project? Neil could already read the answer in Terry's face. She was smiling at the thought of delving into the sub-basement. The dustier, the better. Sir, I would love to do that. What's my time frame? Well, that's just it. There isn't one. I don't want you to drag your figurative heels on the project, of course. I expect regular updates showing what progress you are making. But regardless of how long this takes, we need it done to have a clear handle on what we have down there. So, while I need you to be as efficient as possible, take the time you need to get the job done right. Deal? Deal, responded a very excited Terry. Excellent. Here are the keys to the sub-basement. Keep them with you at all times until we have the doors and locks replaced with the keyless entry system. When that happens, you will be one of the only people with authorized entry into that area. Neil stood and held out his hand for a handshake. I look forward to hearing the first of many reports from you. Taking his hand, Terry responded, I look forward to sending them. Thank you, sir, for trusting me with this job. Terry left his office looking forward to the new task at hand. She wanted to get down to the sub-basement as soon as possible. Hey, fellow Galimarians, this is Dan Adrian, and I just wanted to say thank you for listening to my book. If you can, please click like down below because it really helps me bring these videos to you and lets me know what you like. Also, if you haven't already, please subscribe and click on the bell so that you'll get notified when I release more chapters. If you have any questions about this or any other of my books, or if you want to know more about what it takes to write a novel like this one, please make sure you leave your question in the comments below. Thanks again. I'll see you soon.